Welcome to Ask the Masters podcast. On episode 48, we're joined by Oceanears owner Ed Harper. Oceanears has become the world leader in underwater speakers and sound systems. Today, Dave Penton sits down with Ed via webcast and discusses the different types of underwater speakers.
All right, welcome in. We got a different format today. So I am sitting in my office at Fluid Dynamics Pool and Spa here in Fullerton, California. And I've got Ed Harper sitting in his office in beautiful Ohio, Columbus. Where are you at in Ohio?
Actually, we're in just south of Cleveland. We're real close to Akron, Ohio. And our mailing address is North Canton, and everybody knows that as the home of the Football Hall of Fame, which I've never gone to, but that's what North Canton know about, is they've heard of that.
Okay, perfect. So we are on the Ask the Masters podcast today. Forgot to start with that. So welcome in, Ed, today. And today we're going to be talking about underwater speakers, just the whole history. You've kind of been around in the whole space of underwater sound for a long time. And, I've heard a bunch of your stories and they're really fun. And so I just wanted to kind of visit, your history with this technology and all of that. And so kind of start me off, underwater speakers. There's a lot of people that hear underwater speakers and they're like, really, that's just weird. How can you hear anything underwater? So, but the reality is that underwater speakers actually do work really, really well. So can you kind of explain the technology a little bit?
Yeah, I've been doing speakers now for like a little over 25 years. So I started my business in 1991, but I actually had the design prior to that. Actually, it was the basic concept came about when I was working for a company doing development stuff for the Navy for anti-submarine warfare. And the speaker was, the important part of it. And what they didn't realize was how good the design was. And then I went and expanded on that years later and came up with our products. So it's there's speakers have been around, probably longer than me. I mean, there were people that were doing it before I got into it. It's just that when I got into it, I was very aggressive at it. And one of the key things I was after is to offer a good product for a reasonable price. And it's like you say, a lot of people didn't even know you could do underwater music. Everybody, a lot of people I talk to think, isn't it garbled and bubbly sounding in the water? And in reality, it's just like when you're sitting in your living room. It's actually in a lot of ways better because you don't have all the echoes, reverberations that you get in an air environment.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. You and I have worked on a couple of jobs together, and just we've done some pretty big pools and only needed a couple of speakers. So you don't really have to use a whole lot to really get the effect. So it's really interesting. I want to talk about that a little bit more down the road, but some of your stories about the working with the Navy SEALs and working with the Olympics. So I'd love to kind of understand a little bit more. One of your key partners is the USA Swimming and the synchronized swimmers. And so can you kind of explain a little bit about that and how you've been involved in some of the Olympics and some of the fun stories you have there?
Oh, yeah, sure. I got started when I started my business. Within 4 years, I had the 1996 Olympics in Atlanta. And I had this friend of mine knew of my products, and he got them into the pool. And actually, it turned out while I was I actually got to work at the qualifying event for synchronized swimming, which was the year before the actual 1996 Olympics. And while there, one of the really neat things was I got to know at the time he was the president of the Russian Synchronized Swimming Federation. And it was really an interesting thing is that Christmas after we had, I met him there, he invited me to come to Moscow. So I'm over in Russia, and the place I was staying at, I could look out my window at Red Square. So it's kind of an awesome thing to do. And for 10 years, I did all of the national championships for USA Synchro. And but I'm not as involved in it. I still do stuff with synchronized swimming, but not like the first 10 years. That's what really grew the business, because when I started it, I was going to do it for scuba diving. And if I had stayed with that market, I would have been out of business. It turned out that the girls that do the synchronized swimming, which now they're starting to call artistic swimming, because it's not purely synchronized anymore. They're getting more into the artistic aspect of it. And so that was a thing that grew the business. And I did some pretty interesting things, like I did the 96 Olympics. I was in Beijing for the 2008 Olympic Games. And I didn't do London. And Greece in 2004, they used I think it was a European speaker. We had our speakers over there working with the Greek national team. And like I say, in 2012, we didn't do that. 2016, we did the Brazil Olympic Games. So we've been involved in 3 Olympic competitions. We've been in numerous world championships. And actually, it was 2011. I think it was 2011. I actually got to be an official with FINA for the World Championships in Shanghai, China. So I got to wear the official blue uniform, and it was pretty awesome to get a chance to do that.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's I'm friends with you on Facebook, and so I kind of watch your world travels and your technology. I mean, it really just takes you around the world, and I'm always amazed to see where you are. It's like kind of a Where's Waldo. You're always seem to be in some other place. So talk about that.
I mean, that is one thing I'll have to say with my speakers. It has given me the opportunity to really see a lot of the world, and I mean a lot. I mean, I've been everywhere from going over to the French Open and the German Open in Europe to I've been to Israel, Russia, China, Singapore, Australia, Great Britain, Greece. I mean, a lot of different places, and a lot of it was synchronized swimming. So, I mean, I always held a strong working with them, even though I don't do it as much as I used to. I mean, we're still doing it. The thing that we're getting into now, which I think has the potential of being even larger, is we're getting involved in competitive swimming. And
really, how so?
Yeah, we're starting to get into that, because a lot of the competitive swim teams are looking at if you have to go in and you're a teenager and you have to go swim 5,000 yards or 6,000 yards, that gets kind of boring really fast. If you're in that pool and you're swimming for hours, so if they can get in and play and have music to listen to as they're swimming, it helps keep them from getting bored.
Wow, that's really cool. Yeah, I grew up playing water polo here in Southern California, and I loved playing water polo, but part of it was you had to swim in the off season. You had to stay in shape, and that was always the tedious part that really drove me crazy, because water polo is exciting and everything, and the swimming is just very individual. And so I didn't even realize that technology would work as you're actually doing swimming laps. So that's really cool.
Yeah, we were just down at a swim meet in Greenville, South Carolina, where there were a bunch of kids, and it's part of the YMCA programs. And the kids, when they were actually able to do the music at the meet during practice session, when they were just practicing, and all the kids just thought it was so cool to be able to get in there and listen to music, as there were some of these kids, all were just floored. And we're actually getting a lot of competitive teams where the actual swimmers will go out and fundraise, and they'll tell their coach, that's what we want. We want music in the water. And if you really think about it, what do you see in a lot of the young people today? They're all got those earbuds in their ears. You tie
Exactly.
their sport to their music, and you're going to keep them. They're not going to be as apt to drop out. And not only from the entertainment side of it, you can actually use it from a training tool perspective. And
Yeah,
yeah.
that kind of morphs into kind of the next phase of the thing that I'm so fascinated by is, you use this with divers and the diver recall system and with the Navy and with all of that. So that's always super fascinating too. I mean, you kind of just touch on everything. So explain that a little bit more, how you can actually be communicating underwater to people.
Yeah, well, we've been in, originally when I started my business, it was going to be for scuba diving. And like I said, the synchro was a big thing. But now diving is becoming more and more of that's where we're really doing a lot in now, not only with the U.S. Navy, but for just dive boats in general, where people will go out. And one of the things that we're trying to strive in the diving community is to get everybody on board with, you take a dive boat out and you put 20 divers in the water, and how do you get them up in an emergency situation? And that's where we have the diver recall systems that use our speakers. And so you can actually talk to a diver, or you can use recall tones to get them back to the surface. If there's a dive accident or not necessarily a dive accident, it could be just bad conditions. If you're having a storm come in, you can get the people up and out of the water before it gets rough. But one of the really nice things about our speakers is the voice quality. I mean, we've had people here talking underwater, because if the music is good, well, the thing is, you want to be able to talk to divers and have them understand it. And that's what we're finding out. And actually, it was on an episode of Hawaii Five-0. It was season 8. It was either episode 4 or 5. They used the same concept that we're doing in an episode of Hawaii Five-0, where Danny was on the boat talking to Steve McGarrett underwater using a speaker. And so it's pretty cool to see that. And the boat that they were doing it on, we actually Googled it, and it's a real boat in Honolulu. And we actually sold them some equipment and stuff. And so we were actually out in Hawaii last year in the hotel we stayed at. We actually could watch them filming an episode of Hawaii Five-0. So it's pretty cool. But with the diving, not only is it from the recalls perspective, we're getting into a lot of the resorts. We're working on an order now with the Sandals Beach and Resorts down in the Caribbean. And they're all becoming very concerned about shark activity. And one of the issues is if you're taking tourists out on a boat and you decide, hey, we've got a situation, we need to get people out of the water, how do you effectively get them out? So if you do see a shark and you want people out of the water, so I think that's why Sandals is looking at that, because there is a bigger concern about, shark attacks are up. And people are a little bit, look at the East Coast, all the attacks that go on there.
Sure.
But like with our speakers, one of the things that's is really cool is we've worked with a guy in South Australia. He's near Port Lincoln, and his business is that they take people out for shark dives.
Wow.
Go do shark cave dives, shark diving in cages. And it was like, I think it was in November of last year, they had, it wasn't publicized. It was only publicized a little bit, but not as much as we had liked. But they had it was like a fundraiser for sharks. And what they did is they had a contest, and this was with Airbnb. And what they did is the winner of the contest got to go on this friend of mine's boat, and you can actually sit like in a cup, and you're underwater and you can see the sharks. Well, the cool part of the whole thing was they had Kiss come down and do a concert for the Sharks.
Oh, wow.
And so they had the people that won the contest on one boat, and then on the other boat they had the Kiss band, and they were playing the music to the Sharks underwater through our speakers.
Wow.
So it was pretty cool to hear that, because he uses, actually, it turns out, and a lot of people are floored by it, but they found out that great white sharks like heavy metal music.
Of course they do. That makes perfect sense.
They like AC/DC and stuff like that. And we were actually part of an episode of Shark Week in 2015. It's called Bride of Jaws. And that's where they were doing. And that's one of the places that I've got on my bucket list to go dive with him. And he's got my speakers on it, so I need to get down there and do it myself.
Exactly. That sounds like so much fun. You started in the whole dive world. I mean, that's really kind of what launched your business. Mm-hmm. Talk a little bit about what you can talk about working with the Navy and some of those interesting stories that you can tell us about.
Oh yeah, we've been one of the things that we've been very involved with the Navy is we make what's called a little diver signaling device. And if you think, I can remember back when I was in college doing my work, I was on a co-op student down with the Navy in Key West, and we had to go out one night on a mission to go rendezvous with the Navy salvage ship off the coast. And we were on an LST, and what they were going to do is they were bringing up the wreckage from an F4 that went into the ocean, crashed, and they were bringing it up and putting it on the salvage ship, and then they were transferring it to our boat. And one of the cool things is all the Navy divers, what they did is when their recall devices, they would take an M80 firecracker with a nut on it, and they would light the fuse and throw it over the side of the boat, and it would go boom, and then the guys would know to come up. And so that's where our diver signaling device comes in, because it's a non-explosive way to recall scuba divers. And I've sold probably like over 800 of them to the military over the past 10 years when we've been doing it. And actually, we worked with a Navy diver at the time, and he was looking at wanting to get some cheaper way, some way to recall divers. And I was over at a trade show at the Salon Nautique in Paris, and this guy, my agent over there, and we were talking about it, and we came up with the concept of putting the electronics in the speaker and a lot of little things. And the master diver at the time, he said, he went to NAVC and said, I've got a mission, and I can't afford this other system that's on the list. He says, I need something that I can buy. And he says, I'm going to buy this on this day, whether it's approved or not, because he says, I've got 7 dive stations I have to set up, and I can't afford this other stuff. And it turned out that the day he gave him was a drop dead date. We were approved so that Navy could legally buy it.
Wow.
And now we have our Patriot system, which has voice, and that system is phenomenal. We've been talking with the Navy about it for the past couple of years, because one of the things that when we talked to Navy divers, they said everybody has a lot of tone range, but says nobody has good voice range for talking to divers. And so I went to the people that build the stuff, that the actual electronics that we use, and I told them what I wanted, and they said, well, they says, well, we have to watch it because of feedback, because of this one unit, because it has like a remote head. And if it was too close, you got into a feedback loop if you had an ear speaker. And I said, well, I don't have that issue. I said, my speaker's 30 feet underwater. So I says, I want my microphone as loud as I can. And they came up with the changes that we needed. And we went from like a couple 100-foot range with a single speaker to like between an 8 to 900 foot range, wow, which underwater is a long ways. And then recently, we built an array that's used in Homeland Security, and it's a 3-speaker array. And we put it with the Patriot, and we had some guys test it in the UK, And they came back after doing the testing, and they said if they skip breathe, where they sort of like hold their breath and then breathe and then listen, if they skip breathe, they could hear clean, audible voice at 1,100 meters. So
Wow.
we're talking 3,000 feet voice. And they said under all conditions of breathing, they didn't have to be skip breathing. They could hear it at 800 meters, which is still, that's almost a half a mile.
Wow.
Type of thing. And to be able to understand what is being said. And I said, well, most of the time we don't need to talk to somebody that far. But the reason they want that is, and it all goes back to 9/11. There was a lot of chatter on the intelligence community that Al-Qaeda and people like that were training divers for going after targets in the water. Like, it could be a nuclear power plant, or it could be a cruise ship, or it could be some kind of harbor. So when they developed the sonars, because they could detect swimmers at long ranges, and they could tell they were divers because they wanted to build if there were people coming in, he says, okay, we can detect them. But then they started saying, well, geez, we can detect the guy at 500 yards, but how do you talk to him? If he's a bad guy, he's not going to have a radio. You can't call him on a radio and say, hey, what are you doing out there? And they said, that's a big issue. And you don't want to, at the time, they could maybe talk to somebody 200 feet away. And what happened is they said, well, if he is a bad guy and you're waiting till he's 200 feet away to talk to him, and if he's carrying enough explosives, he could take you out on the shockwave. So they said, we want a longer range for more standoff. So they wanted to build to have a point where if the guy crosses it, they can assume he's hostile, and then they would go out there and basically neutralizing. That could mean lethal force or whatever it takes. But they wanted it, and there was a reason for it, because remember, and you always have to give that, you don't want to just kill them right off the bat. You have to warn them.
Sure.
And the reason they wanted is they were afraid that, well, it might be some 16-year-old in an area trying to get lobsters when he shouldn't be. And if you didn't get a hold of him and you kill him, that makes front page news, that somebody kills somebody like that. So they wanted to be able to give that longer standoff so they could say, okay, if you cross this point, we're assuming you're hostile. And because if you're not, you would leave the area if you're told to. So that's where, and we built like 120 arrays for Homeland Security, but it turned out that in reality that it never really materialized. They were thinking it was going to be an issue, but it never did. They didn't really have any actual people come in and try to take out a target. They were very concerned about it for a long time, and then it went by pretty much. I guess there was more stuff done over in the Middle East than here. And I guess that's all due to our Homeland Security people doing their job and keeping that threat from really materializing like they were concerned about. But they did have the capability to build a talk to it. And we've actually worked with other companies like over in Europe and the UK and in the Middle East that are using our arrays to do exactly that kind of thing on oil platforms over in the Middle East, where they're hanging him down under there to talk to potential people coming in on oil platforms, because that is a high value target over there. So there's a very big concern. So they still use them over there.
Yeah, one of the things, the common theme that we keep talking about is these units are in the ocean, and the Navy's using them, and these are real, highly commercial type environments, and not environments where you're kind of being gentle with them. And so one of the things that I've always been impressed is that all of that technology, again, there's some tweaks in that, but that technology really is is the same for the most part as what you're putting in a swimming pool. So let's turn that corner a little bit and just talk a little bit about usage in swimming pools and kind of maybe some of the fun projects that you've done over the years, if you're allowed to talk about them, and just kind of how the swimming pool environment works. And most of our listeners are builders and architects and designers. So just touch a little bit, let's not get too deep in the weeds, but just touch a little bit on the technology and what is involved in installing these in a pool and dispel some of the myths, because it sounds like it could be crazy difficult, but in reality, it's really not all that difficult.
No, it's not. Well, actually, it's only been, I guess, the past 10 years that we've started doing we have a built-in speaker. Prior to that, everything we built, and what most people build, are drop-in speakers, portable. And there are a few people, they will take their drop-in speaker and just put it in a niche and put it in a pool. Well, what I did years ago, this guy on the West Coast called me up and says, "Hey, I want to put music in my pool. I want a built-in speaker." So he said, "Well, what can you do for us?" So I said, "Okay." I took, at the time, it was the American Products, the very large, I guess like 10-inch pool light. And the very first things that we started building, what we call an SP7. And I took the pool light, I took the glass lens out, and then I took the light bulb out, and I put a speaker module in place of the glass lens. And then we plugged into the light socket and then used the same cable to go up to your amplifier and stuff. But after a while doing that, I was starting to have a whole bunch of glass lenses and light bulbs, because every light I bought, I didn't use those. So I said I could have a little side business selling those 500-watt pool lights. And so I took that, and I began to think, well, geez, there's got to be something done different about this. And then that's when I got with my guy, and we sat down and actually we based the design on that Pentair niche. And here's the standard Pentair niche. That's the one that most people use. This was what used to be Pentair, and then now it used to be American Products, and now it's Pentair, but it's very similar to the Hayward niche. So we took this niche, and with the pool light that went in it, we wanted to be essentially to stick out the same distance out from the pool wall as the speaker did, and the same diameter. And what we did is, this is the speaker that goes with that niche. And you see it's only 2 inches thick. And this right here, the black surface, that's the actual radiating force, the face that actually where the sound is created. And what we did with the design is we decided, let's design it from the ground up to really be for built-in installation. So we actually have a place on the back. That's where your cable goes. You connect to your cable. That goes into your niche, up through your conduit to your breakout box and so forth. And this installs the same way you would a pool light. There's the top screw, and then on the niche, this would be the top. This is like for the one set the screw that goes in. And then on the bottom, there are these 2 ears. And the pool light, part of it would go in between the ears. And then you would tighten the top screw. Well, when we put our speaker in there, we actually put a screw, and it's got a piece of PVC. And when you tighten it up, it pulls it in against the back. And so that pulls in the bottom of the speaker. And we still use the same top hole to secure the top part.
Yeah, one of the things.
Oh, yeah.
Before we go any further, I want to keep explaining it. But one of the things that out here in California, a lot of our pool the light niches that get used out here in California, and I know in a lot of other places in the country, they've gone to a PVC niche, and that doesn't meet with the NEC. So if you know you're going to be using a speaker, we need to go to the stainless steel niche.
Right. You have to go to the stainless steel. It used to be you could use the PVC niche, but then they said nope, can't do it. And the other thing that they're requiring now, and we get our own grills made. You actually have to put a grill on the speaker. So we did is this is 10 gauge stainless steel. So that goes onto the speaker front. So this is what you see on your pool. When this is all like, this sticks out from the pool wall, and then you've got that, but everything else is inside there. So it's a very, very low profile speaker, but in a residential pool, you could do a single speaker, but we tell people that when you're talking to your clients, typically your clients they're more on the higher end of the scale. These aren't for your 20-foot diameter above the ground pool in the backyard.
Right.
These are for your pools that are ideally concrete and gunite insulate construction, and where you can put these niches in. And we found that if these people have spent money on a stereo system, and you don't want to have to go and tell your client that, oh, you've got this nice stereo system, but you've got to run mono music, one channel music. So the ideal way is that you propose to them 2 speakers, 1 per channel on your stereo. And then that way, what happens is, it's why you have stereos to start with, is when you're playing music, you might have the left channel doing a trumpet sound and the other channel doing vocal. Well, if you have 2 speakers, that speaker is going to reproduce the trumpet sound better than trying to do the vocal and the trumpet sound at the same time, and vice versa. The vocal is going to be crisper and truer, since it's not having to try to reproduce the trumpet sound at the same time. So you end up getting that little bit better sound quality that what most people are after is to. And the one thing that makes our speaker a little bit better in the music reproduction is the housing material is PVC. So it's a dead material. It doesn't ring down like, the old expression is, you got a bell, and if you strike a bell, how it rings.
Sure.
You strike it. Well, with PVC, you don't get that. You would get a thud, and that's it. You don't get the ring down. So that's why you get a little bit better sound characteristics out of the speaker. And we've had people that put the speakers in the water, and they can't believe what it sounds like. And we did a job down in with one of the people, Doug Johnson, he did a pool down in Cisco, Texas, and it was with the guy that developed the fracking process. And he put 4 of our speakers in his pool, and this is one of the only few that I've ever gone and did an install on, because I wanted to see this pool this guy was building. I mean, the guy was putting $250,000 just in the tile in the pool, and he had a cross in the center. It was like at the Bellagio where it shoot water jets up. So I said, I want to go see this place. So I drove down and took the stuff with me, and we put them in the pool. And I used to have it on my YouTube site where I was up on the roof of the house shooting video of the pool, and you could actually, our speaker is the only one you can play in air and not break it. If you talk to any other people that do speakers, and they'll tell you right up front, don't do that. Mine, I do it all the time. And so I was up on the roof shooting it, and they were working on the pool at the same time. So you could hear in the background our music, and then you could hear the guys cutting this tile and stuff with the saws. So it was quite loud for being running air. And we did another job down in Miami where they had put a pool up on the top of a parking garage. It was on the 9th floor, and we put a sound system in there, a complete sound system, amplifiers and the whole bit. And it was for this big condominium, but that was pretty awesome. But the problem they had is where they wanted to put the niches in, they could not put a full niche in because there were structural members in the way. So they actually had to cut the niche down, re-weld it and stuff. But with UL, and see, the thing is with speakers, they really don't have a UL listing on it. Because when you do UL, you have to specify everything that's going to be tested with that device. So like if you want to test A speaker, you would have to identify any amplifiers, mixers, CD players, whatever's going to be used with it. And it all has to be tested as a complete package. And you can't use other people's test data like for the amplifier. They have to retest the amplifier completely. So you're looking at a very substantial amount of money to get it. And when you think about it, a speaker is a passive device. It doesn't do anything in the water. It's what it connects to is where the problem is. And that's why, if anything, we tell people the main thing is be sure you have your GFI, ground fault interrupt, that everything's plugged into. We have everything on an isolation transformer. And now with the way the NEC code works, now that they've mandated that you have a metal niche and you have a grill on your speaker, what that essentially does is it puts your speaker in what they call a Faraday cage. There's no way, because you ground your niche for a speaker just like you do for a pool light. You have to have all your bonding wires and everything. So there's no way that any kind of electric voltage can get out of that, away from that speaker, because it's all contained. It's behind the grill and in the niche, so any stray voltage goes right to ground, or any voltage goes to ground. So in reality, it makes it very safe that way. But my question has always been, okay, we used to could use the plastic niche, and they say, well, you can't do it. Well, yeah, you go and look at how many people have been killed on pool pumps, pool lights, regular lights. And other devices, do you see them having them put the pump inside a stainless steel cage and stuff where you can't get to it? Or any kind of control devices? No, but yet a speaker, they want that done to. And if you look at it historically, in the 40 years or so that speakers have been around, have you ever seen anybody killed with a speaker?
Nope.
You've seen a lot of headlines where people have been electrocuted by pump motors, pool lights, things like that. And like with our speaker, the way I've got it designed, it's so structurally strong that you could actually take my speaker, put it out there in your driveway, lay it on the grill face, and park your car on top of it. You're not gonna. It's structurally that strong, so it really is frustrating when you see them put all this requirement on the having to have the stainless steel niche versus the PVC niche, when you still got all the same bonding that's on it. It's a plastic material. But that whoever wrote the NEC code for that, I'm not sure exactly I know what they're trying to do, but why aren't they doing that same concept on other electrical devices on a pool site?
Sure. So who is your typical client? Do you generally sell direct to homeowners? Do you generally work with pool builders? What is your client? And if somebody wants to kind of specify this, can you give us some just general design parameters? I mean, you talked about, two in a pool, just so you can do the opposing channels. Do you want one on the one side of the pool and another on the other side of the pool so that they're facing each other? Just give us some kind of general design terms.
Yeah, when you want to put speakers in your pool, like say for a small pool, but like you start getting into the larger pools, we recommend going, because the way it goes, you go from 1 to 2, then 2 to 4, and then 4 to 8 to get the same doubling effect. So we say if you're going above just a small residential pool, to go after 4 to, like we say 6 for like a 25-meter pool, and that's probably even more than's needed. But we feel you don't want to have it's always easier to turn music down than turn it up. So we tell people to go after 4, and then the way ours is designed, we tell people you get 2 speakers, and you have to have a transformer because these are piezo speakers. And then so when you go speaker 3 and 4, you just have to buy the speaker because you can run them because you can run multiple speakers off of a transformer.
Okay.
So that way you end up 4 speakers, 2 transformers, and that aspect of it. Our clients in the swimming pool industry, it's surprising. See, most of my business is generated by the internet. I don't do any magazine advertising. I don't do any. Mainly, it's my website, and it's people looking for underwater speakers. And when you do a Google search, it doesn't bring up a lot of choices. You'll find out that there's only 3 or 4 people that do speakers in the United States, and maybe a half dozen in the world. And there's you can find cheap speakers made in China, but the old adage is you get what you pay for.
Right.
You want something good. It's a U.S. made product, and we're very proud of that for doing it for 25 years. So we've as far as the clients that are finding us, a lot of them, when I talk to them, they tell me their pool builder doesn't know it can even be done.
Really?
And they ask them, and they don't know about it. So a lot of the pool builders the homeowners come to us, find out, because they'll do the searches, and then they'll come to us and say, okay, can I get them? And get the speakers, and then they'll have their pool guy give them to the AV guy that's doing the sound system. But what we would like to do is to really get closer with the pool builder, because see, one of the problems we've had is when you try to, you have a dealer and then you got a retail price. The problem is trying to come up with that happy medium, because a lot of times it's the person that owns the speaker, that owns the home, contacts us. And so if you quote him a price, then if the builder, if he wants to sell it to him, that's where we're trying to rethink how we're doing things to try to get to where we're going to work with pool builders that want to market our product. Because if you think about it, it's got a whole new avenue of possibilities. When you're playing music in the water, because there's so much being done on sound therapy and for relaxation and stuff like that. So we're wanting to, actually, we got involved with the Master Pool Builders Guild. And we're like their preferred supplier for underwater speakers. So that's why on our literature, we'll say Master Pool Builders Guild. And we encourage them, and because what happens is that they spec our speaker into the job and they sell it, then they tell Master Pool Builders Guild, and then they get a percentage back as our so it helps their organization to get some funding. But we don't really see, we'd like to see more of them doing it. Like we had a check the other day where we sent to them and they sent it back because they weren't involved with it. And I says, well, we'd like to be able to write you guys a $3,000 check because of your clients, your members putting our speakers into pools and stuff like that. Because we were proud to, be part of the Master Pool Builders Guild. And because that's one of the big things, it's just like the Genesis people that do the pool design. Well, that's what these Master Pool Builder Guild people are, the same kind of concept.
Sure. So in an ideal world, you would prefer to get the word out to not only architects, but also to the pool building community.
Right.
And kind of circling this all the way back around to where we started a little bit, and the millennials. I mean, music is, I joke, we have a rule in our house. I have teenagers, and the rule in our house is when you're kind of interacting in family space, you have to have one earbud out, and it's a constant fight because they're so plugged in and they have the two earbuds in all the time, and they're kind of in their own world. And, and so music is just, it's second nature to them, and they want it everywhere. And so, as they begin to become part of the buying public and grow up, I can only see this becoming even more of a popular option. So to really just get people to start, get them exposed to the fact that, hey, underwater music is a real thing. And there are no real limitations on it. It's something that can be offered, and the client can always say no, but if you don't know about it and you don't offer it, it's are you doing a disservice to your client? So that's one of the things that I'm really excited about this podcast, is just to allow everybody to understand, hey, this technology does exist. I can speak. We've done a number of your systems in our pools, and the clients just rave about it. I'll be honest, the first time I heard about it, I thought, well, this is kind of a little bit strange. And then that client came back and said, wow, this is so amazing, and they love it so much. And it's a really cool technology. One of the things that I love about your system in particular is, the thing is bomb proof. I mean, we've never had a failure. We've never even had any issues with it. And I know in talking with you over the years, you've had very few of these that you've ever had to warranty.
The biggest thing the biggest problem that we've seen in the 25 years that we've been building has been the transformer. And what we're doing now is we actually fuse protect the whole transformer. And it was for that purpose of, if somebody did connect the transformer to something and they put too much power to it, instead of it burning out the transformer, we wanted it to blow a fuse. And we looked at a lot of different types of technologies for circuit protection, and it turned out really the best one was just the old-fashioned fuse, because a lot of times by the time some of these other devices would work, the damage was done. And so now and that was the main thing. And probably in 25 years, I've only had 2 speakers that were really gross failure. I mean, really have a problem with, and it was the same guy. And I'm not sure what he did, but he hooked up something wrong and actually melted the ceramic material that drives these things. But we've had people that will they'll flood, and they'll actually work with water in them. They will keep working. They keep plucking away. So but we tell people always, especially the drop-in speakers, we tell people when you're using them and you take them out, shake them like you would a canteen. And if you hear water sloshing around inside, then we need to get, if you drain it out and you can dry it, it's repairable. It's a fixable situation. Now, if you procrastinate, then you can have issues. But just to give you a perspective of how our speakers have endured, in 1996, NASA got a hold of us and they bought 16 speakers for the NBL in Houston. That's where they trained the astronauts. And when I was at the DEMA show in Orlando this year, I talked with the guy that works there, and they're still using those same speakers today.
Wow, 25 years later.
25 years later, they're still using the same speakers. And what was really cool is one time that they actually sent some of them over to the Star City, but the Russians, when they were using them, they thought there was something super classified, because they said they'd never seen anything like it. Wow. And they did like it did, but they were used. So we were involved not only in the U.S. space program, but the Russian space program.
Yeah, well, I just want to say thank you so much for spending some time with us here. I mean, I always love talking to you, and you and I have these chats on cell phone and everything, and so it's always I'm always amazed. You always have a new story and a new fun thing and a new way that you've seen this integrated, and so I'm just super excited to be able to expose our listeners to this and just really kind of open everybody's eyes and just say, hey, here's something to consider. It's another option. It's not for everybody, but there are clients that would be really intrigued by this, and the technology. It's not voodoo science. It is for real, and the USA Swimming. It's been at the Olympics. The Navy uses it. All of these different places have used it, and so if it was voodoo science and didn't really work, all of these entities wouldn't be continuing to be clients of yours. So thank you so much for joining us today. And just real quick, give us your website. How can people kind of connect with you and find out more about your product?
Yeah, it's a very easy website. It's our registered trademark. and that's Oceanears, and that's OCEANEARS, Oceanears, all one word, .com. And I got that registered probably 20 years ago, and it turns out that in this day and age with search engines, all you have to do is type in Oceanears into Google, and it'll pull us up.
Awesome.
We're the only people that really, I registered the word itself, not a diagram or something. I actually registered the Oceanears because most people spell it with a double E as Oceanears. Like that's what an ocean engineer is, an Oceaneer.
Right. But
we took and had it registered as EARS because it was pretty unique. And I mean, that's even a story in itself, how that came about.
So, yeah, well, we'll save that for the next podcast because we're getting up against time here.
Yeah, if anybody needs any information, Oceanears.com. We'd like to work with the pool builders, and if people are really interested, we'll work with them and protect them. They just tell us where they want the protection and let us know, and we'll work with them. If somebody calls us, we'll say, go to this facility, because we would like to get more pool builders speccing this stuff into homes. And when you think about it, you could, if nothing else, use it as a lead to help maybe get that $1 million pool. If you can say, hey, we can put speakers in your pool, and even if it's at cost, if it's to get you that $1 million job, hey, it's worth it.
Yeah, exactly. It's a great way to differentiate yourself. So thank you so much, Ed. And we hope that really everybody will explore this a little bit more and just another option, just trying to broaden everybody's horizon. So for the Ask the Masters podcast, this is Dave and Ed signing off for the day.
Okay, I appreciate it.
Ask the Masters is dedicated to educating, mentoring, and designing a better workplace for the swimming pool industry and their families. Please take a moment to share, like, and review our content with all of those that would be interested.